When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's right, everybody. We are back. This is the HTML All the Things podcast. This episode is going to be an interesting one, I think. So I want to talk about a step above vibe coding. And what I mean by that is I went through a bit of a personal situation, not like a personal, like, oh no, like my
life
girlfriend
crisis,
broke up with me or something. Yeah, no, nothing like that. It's like a personal work situation that worked out just fine. Just kind of doing a ticket. And after it, I kind of thought to myself, I was like, was that vibe coding? So I want to talk about that. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And remember, if you want to learn how to code, and they now have full stack courses, you can go and do so on Scrimba. Learn your front end, learn your back end. I took that CSS variables course a while ago to refamiliarize myself with CSS variables. Again, get up to 20% off a paid subscription on Scrimba. That's scrimba.com/links/HTML all the things. That is an affiliate link, and full details will be on the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. So I want to kick this off. And yes, we are still doing conversational episodes. Don't worry. I want to lay out the episode first. So I'm going to talk at you, the audience, for a little bit, just to lay things out. And then we'll kind of have a chat about this, because this is weird. And this is kind of what I went through. So I kind of have literally a section in the show notes called The Big Question. The big question is kind of a two-parter, and it is, what's the step above vibe coding? Is it still vibe coding? So if you don't know what vibe coding is, vibe coding, or at least the meme of a vibe coder, is someone who is coding up a project entirely with AI. They have little to no, usually no programming knowledge, even low computer skills even, so they don't even know a lot about, databases and computers and things like that. And so whenever they make something with vibe coding, it works, but unfortunately some chaos and weird issues arise due to A, their inexperience, and B, the fact that, they don't know how to sort of correct the AI. And this is where the idea for this episode came from. Because what happens when a programmer doesn't intentionally, quote unquote, go to vibe code? We know that some influencers online who are, developers, coders, they will intentionally go to vibe code. But instead, I was using AI to code something up, but it was coding something up that was new to me. And I'm going to lay this out for you now, this whole sort of situation. So I recently had to create a Google News sitemap, and the parameters were that it had to update once daily. It needed to be completely free. So the hosting and everything needed to be completely free. I was originally going to use a Make or a Zapier, and unfortunately couldn't use those because I kept bumping up on the limitations of their free plans. And this is for a website, obviously. However, I was not able to host it on the same server as the website, as it is Webflow. Now, there may be some hacky way to do it, whatever, but I did not go that route, because I know some people say, oh, you can kind of store it in a CMS item and do this and that. I decided to not go that route. And as I said, this is a Webflow website. So I knew that I needed to either scrape the website, or most likely during my research, figure out how to use the Webflow API. And the API ended up being the solution and the best solution, or the most recommended solution, according to all my research at the time. So, okay, I start off, I try Make, I try Zapier, I start bumping up on those limitations, like I said. And so I say, okay, I need to kind of restart this. So I open up ChatGPT, and this is where I kind of vibe coded a solution, but my experience came in. So I said, all right, ChatGPT, this is the situation. I gave it all the parameters that I just said to you. And I said, I've tried Make, I've tried Zapier. These are the limitations I'm hitting. It needs to be completely free. We don't have any more budget to add to this project. And this is a client project, just an FYI. And so it's what can we do? And so it suggested a solution using GitHub, and more specifically using GitHub Pages as well as GitHub Actions, and coding it, at least in part, in Node.js or Node.js. So this is where some vibe coding stuff comes in, because not only am I talking to an AI, but I've personally never used Node.js before. I've been in the industry for a long time, but just a bit of background. I do a lot of small to medium business clients, and they almost always do not want something custom. They want something built with a page builder, or they want something, custom coded if it's like really small, like quite literally HTML and CSS. Or they'll want like WordPress because their marketing team is trained on WordPress, things like that. And I'm actually more of a solutions architect for them and less of like a quote unquote developer every day. I'm not like constantly coding. In fact, I can go days and days or even months talking to people about a content plan and not actually really coding too much. So I've never used Node.js before. And as such, I've never used GitHub Pages, and I've also never used GitHub Actions before either. And I haven't even actually attempted to use, at this point in the project, I've never actually tried to use the Webflow API before, but I have used other APIs in the past, so I have experience there. And ChatGPT was able to architect this solution for me, and I even told it this. I said like, hey, I don't know Node.js, I don't know all these things. I need you to like tell me what to do step by step. And I did say like I'm a technical person, so you can like talk tech with me, but I'm a beginner in this particular thing. So ChatGPT was able to help me write the code. It was able to help me get a repo set up on GitHub. And it was also able to help me troubleshoot any issues that arose, and also was also able to help me test what was going on. This is where the kind of vibe coding ends, however. So we got the whole thing set up. Everything was great, but it wasn't working. So it was like, error, whatever. And the error we were getting was like error 400 or something, really generic. And it kept saying, okay, there's something going on. Like you grabbed the wrong ID for the API, or you grabbed the wrong ID from the CMS from Webflow. We need to kind of fix this. And basically, like, I tried this and that. It was trying to help me do things. It was having me, run different code and try different troubleshooted code and things like that. And nothing was working. And I was able to figure out, not ChatGPT, but I was able to figure out that we were barking up the wrong tree. We got stuck for quite a while in that sort of like back and forth loop. But then I realized that we were coding in API v1, this is for Webflow, when we needed to be coding in API v2. So when I realized this, I sent ChatGPT that info that it needed, and it was like, oh yeah, okay, if you need to do, v2, this is the code that we should be replacing. This is what we need to fix. The weird thing is that the bot, even though we did quite an extensive amount of troubleshooting, was unable to figure out this troubleshooting step. It just couldn't seem to figure out. It was just sort of like, well, what basically kind of led me down this was during one of the troubleshooting steps, it mentioned something like this error can sometimes happen, in API v2, but like we're not using that or something like that. And I was like, we're not using that. And I went looking, doing some Googling, doing some research, and was like, okay, we're coding and trying to like talk to API v1, and that's just not the case. Another thing that I noticed too is that I realized and used my own knowledge for was actually an API key. So obviously you're not really supposed to be putting your API keys out in public. However, one of the troubleshooting steps, although the bot did lightly warn me that this is really supposed to be temporary, but it warned me like, hey, maybe we should hard code in the API key just to make sure it's like working. And so we'll like just put it in the file for now. So I used my own knowledge to realize, hey, that's not great. Now, my API key is limited to read only on public data anyway, so even if someone like stole it, it wasn't a big deal. However, I did create a second API key, use that in the troubleshooting step, and then later deleted it after we got everything working. So again, this is me doing this, the bot's not doing this. And then, as the kind of like the last thing, we got everything working, the error 400 is working, or the error 400 is gone, excuse me, and the data was coming in, but it was kind of garbled. And I realized that the API data is, it's not being indexed correctly. Like it's grabbing the wrong title. It's grabbing like some other random title thing and this and that. And so then I went in on my own accord without ChatGPT telling me at all. And I checked the raw payload and realized that ChatGPT was indexing it incorrectly. It wasn't going like a level in enough into the structure that was being given to us by the API. And so I explained that to the bot, and then it wrote a correction. It was like, okay, try this, blah, blah, blah. And then it did it. So now we have a working new sitemap. I want to test it for 7 days. I'm on like day 4 and it's still working. So that's good. And things seem to be working well. So this is, and I'm like, pass on to Mike now that I've kind of like laid out the episode, but this is where I was thinking to myself, like, where is, I guess, the line of vibe coding? Not that that's going to be like an easy thing for us to define for everybody kind of thing, and probably impossible to define for everybody. But I felt like I was vibe coding And yet vibe coding feels silly, if that makes sense. Like vibe coding doesn't feel super serious for a lot of developers. And I understand that people use vibe coding for real businesses. I'm not trying to like belittle it. But a lot of developers will kind of do an eye roll and be like, oh, that's that vibe coding thing. You really should learn how to code. Like that's just in the beginning. And so I wonder if anyone's actually been, like a developer has actually been chased off from doing something like what I just did, where I just didn't know, some of the key steps, to be fair. I didn't know some of the key steps, but I was able to get this working in, I think, a couple of afternoons, realistically, probably like 4 hours with the troubleshooting. So like, this is what I want to discuss. Like, is vibe coding like super serious? Is it silly? Is what I did vibe coding? Or was I just kind of like using, advanced documentation? Like, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting topic to talk about right now, because I think everyone is kind of thinking about the same thing, at least the people that are actually using these AI products as much as they can, right? Like for me personally, I've used a lot of different AI products at this point, and my day-to-day coding, I will consistently use them. Like my brain has been somewhat rewired to adjust to how these AI products help me code. And I don't think that that's necessarily vibe coding. I personally don't think what you did directly was vibe coding. I think you had some aspects of vibe coding, but I don't think you can like label the whole thing a vibe code. Vibe coding to me, and from what I've seen, is mostly people just going into a text prompt, entering something, and coming out with a result. Maybe asking the text prompt a couple more things further forward to fix, and then that's it. Like never diving into the code. I think from what you're saying, you did dive into the code to some degree. You did figure out what was wrong. You asked it to fix stuff. So you were on the edge to a certain degree of the vibe code aspect. But overall, if you're diving into a code base and changing things that aren't just like API keys, like API vibe code, a lot of times will tell you to do API keys, and that doesn't count. But if you're not just changing API keys, I would say that that's already outside of the vibe coding space. That's more just you using an AI tool to help you code. I really have seen people be hesitant to do this kind of stuff. Like I've had developers that I've worked with that were hesitant to even integrate AI tools into their workflows. I've had friends that I've talked to that were like, I don't know if I want to go down that route because I feel like I'll lose my skills. Like we have people online, like on YouTube, saying like, oh, you got to turn off your autocompletes every once in a while to make sure that you can still code. Like there's a lot of back and forth pushing between like hardcore developers, I'm doing air quotes right now in the air, and like people that are just coding. For me, I feel like whatever gets the job done in the best, most efficient way without errors is what I'm going to do at this point. Like it's the same thing with like when Stack Overflow became big, I started using Stack Overflow a lot. And I think there were some people saying like, oh, you shouldn't use Stack Overflow. There were dejectors about that even.
There's always like a denier where it's like, don't you be reading those magazines? Like,
yeah, back in my day, we only had the service manuals and stuff like that. So there's always going to be people that say that. And there's some validity to their arguments. I want to say that too. Like the people that are like, trying to push us back are not saying that just out of like, oh, they're scared of whatever. They do have some validity. Like learning how to read documentation is a beneficial thing. Learning how to code without AI tools is a beneficial thing. The problem is when you do that, you're putting yourself behind everyone that's learning to embrace the AI tools. And that's where I see the biggest concern right now for everyone, is that if you don't embrace these AI tools, you're not going to be as productive as the person that does. So even if your intention is like, hey, I'm going to do this the hard way, and I'm going to go through and like, screw around and figure out like Node and all that myself. Like this task that you have in front of you that you did in 2 afternoons, 4 hours, probably without AI in any capacity would have taken you maybe like 40 hours. Like I think a 10x is not, I don't think that's an over exaggeration, because you would have had to learn so many different aspects of the backend flow, the API flow, like you would have to learn so many different things, and you would have Google searched it, and you would have Stack Overflowed it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you think that that's a realistic estimate?
I would say so. I was just kind of thinking like maybe just like kind of in general, like, are we putting like too hardcore of labels on this stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Because it's like, is this a vibe code? Is this not, this and that? It's like, at the end of the
Who
day,
cares?
like if you, well, because what I'm thinking is like, if it wasn't a revolutionary tool like AI, and we wanted to like code something up quickly, and like a new type of service manual came out that was indexed like never before and had the absolute best, documentation. You're able to find the section immediately. It was like so well written. And like, what if it wasn't even digital, right? It's sort of like, would we consider that like, oh, your manual coding, your service manual coding kind of thing? You know what I mean? Like, I just wonder, like, are we putting like too hardcore of a label on some of this stuff?
Yeah, I think we are. Like, I think us even discussing this is kind of adding to that discussion and putting those labels on as well. Like, we're adding to the stigma. I don't think it matters at the end of the day. Like, if I'm really a solutions driven person, as are you, I think, where if a client or a boss or whatever, or like your own like self comes and they're like, hey, we need this feature, whether you vibe coded it or architected it from the scratch or built it in C or wrote it in binary or assembly, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter. Does the feature work? Is it maintainable?
Mm-hmm.
Did you meet the spec that was aligned to you? Did you communicate properly to the client about everything, and did you get the right information from them? All of that is far more important than whatever you use to use it. Well, like, it could be a vibe, like, someone could solve someone's issue with a vibe code without touching code ever.
Right.
And that would be just as valuable as someone jumping into the code and doing it. But it all depends on the speed and, again, the maintainability of the code. Like, if the vibe code makes shitty code that in a day breaks, then yeah, the vibe code was bad, and therefore the product that you gave them was bad. But if the vibe code makes a really good piece of software that maintains stability for months and years, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, what does it matter?
And like with that, like you were talking time estimates, it's like going through and like doing things the way we did things 3-4 years ago, looking at Stack Overflow, looking at guides, whatever. What if I found a guide that was bad? What if I found a guide that was, I'll give an example. Like, when I was learning to code Svelte, like, I took a guide and like the guide was really well written and I really liked it. But then I found out it was for the wrong version of Svelte because I was like brand new. I didn't really realize the implication, or like I didn't even think of a version at all. And then when I went in, I was like, why the heck are these commands different? Like, what's going on here? And like none of these, and it was just like generic commands, like compile this or this, that, or whatever, like just, and they weren't working. And I was like, why, like, what is happening? And then eventually, like, I had to figure out like, oh, like this is a different version. Like I'm coding in the wrong version. And so my point is like, what if I had like written up an amazing fix, or like what seemed to be an amazing fix that fixed the issue in like an insecure version of something? But what if I didn't get that insecure version of something from ChatGPT? I got it from a guide that I found. People, because like people want us to go back, quote unquote, to the older ways. It's like, I get it to an extent because like you have to think it through, because you have to like, do the Googling, find a guide you like, or find, bits and pieces, and then put your own guide together. You have to critically think when you're looking at those things. Whereas a ChatGPT is less of a critical think, I think, and it's more of like, hey, just plug this in, just plug that in, just plug this in, just plug that in, and then it works a lot of the time. And so there's a lot less critical thinking. And so like that is, certainly a red flag to an extent. However, like people can make the same mistakes as vibe coders can. People can make if you did not know that, doing, X thing was like what if I didn't know about the API key thing? Even though it like lightly warned me, it didn't explicitly say like, do not do this. It was just like, like maybe we'll temporarily do this. It was kind of like dancing around it a bit. And it's like, what if I didn't know to like do that second API key that I then disavowed? And what if I was like a person who, how whenever there's permissions, people will just like go into the permissions and just like go and they'll say like, give all permissions, like all privileges, just to like make it quick. Well, if I had done that and then published my API key, it's like now people have access to like read and write like these stories that this person has written. They can delete all of his news stories. They can delete all of his website assets to some extent, whatever the API is capable of doing. And like, that's really bad. And that wouldn't be something that I would like put in there. That wouldn't be something that I would think of if I was just purely vibe coding.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, I think it does matter that you know your stuff to a certain degree. And I think it matters that you've been through the ringer of pre-AI coding. Like, I think that actually does have some value. All right. Like, I think there's this concept, and I'm going to bring up something that Theo said. Theo, like T3 Theo, he has a video that he released recently. Our junior devs screwed, and he does a really good job at laying out what he fears for the upcoming generation of developers. And I very much like align with this. Is that they're not going to do the hard stuff, like you were saying, Matt, like the stuff that you just don't like, ask ChatGPT and just plug in, the stuff where you have to critically think.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do that because there's just no necessity to do it. But realistically, the reason that I've become a decent developer is because I've been through the ringer on that hard stuff.
Right.
And I can and I do critically think a lot. Even when I'm using AI, I will critically think. So the ability to go through the shit, to go through the hard stuff, to go through that like surface level and get out the other side was really hard. I did it out of necessity because there was no other way.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have done the same thing if I had ChatGPT on my side? I'm kind of a lazy person. I probably wouldn't have. So I would have lost those skills of like troubleshooting and going to random forums and trying a million different things and like stepping away from the computer, coming back. Like, I would have lost all that. And really, to be a good developer, that's probably the most critical thing, is the critical thinking aspect and being able to go through walls and figuring out how to put stuff together. And like that, all that stuff establishes new ways for you to code. And that is going away. So I think the people that are going to be successful moving forward right now, the juniors that get through the ringer, are going to be the ones that are able to say, no, I'm not going to ask ChatGPT this, and I am going to go through and figure out how to do this manually and how to figure this out and go through the shit and go and make it hard for myself on purpose. And it's going to be very hard.
Yeah.
Because
no, 100%.
again, for myself, I don't know if I would be able to do that. If I think myself back then, I would probably just use ChatGPT for everything. Having said that, there is another aspect to this. Like, maybe the complexity of our applications is going to get so hard that the ChatGPT will be that extra layer, and then everything above that, like the hard stuff, will be the thing that you have to get through. Like,
it's just the way to do it at that point.
Exactly. Like that could totally be the case. And then like those people would just get the first part done really quickly, and then the last part they would have to struggle through. And again, I think it's that struggle where you learn. And that's, again, what Theo was saying is like, as long as you can get to that struggle when you're learning and get through it, whether it's with AI, whether it's not with AI, but as long as you're feeling that struggle, like as long as you get to that wall and you're like, fuck, this sucks and I hate it, and I'm going to solve it, I'm going to do this, and you get through it, that's when you know you're starting to get there. That's when you know you're breaking through the barriers. That's when you know you're starting to put stuff together. A lot of people, and I saw this in college a lot, like a ton in university and college, will hit a wall in programming and be like, no, I can't do this, and then go back out.
Yeah,
like a lot of people. Remember, like I mean, in our college program, probably like only 50% of people could code, maybe less. Like 25% of people at the end of the program would write code. Everyone else would either copy paste, because that's what we were taught to do, or would ask their friends to write their code. Like, a lot of people would just rely on their partners to do 90% of the work. That happened all the time. In university, it was the same thing for me, where like at most 50% of the class could code at the end of the program. And mine was a very, absolutely. At most 50%. The other 50% rode on the coattails of their partners.
I'm surprised, because that was like a programming course. Like the college course that we took was very much, I would say, hardware heavy, but it was also IT heavy. And then it was also like, it really was a mix. Like, it was a decent, like, kind of smorgasbord. And then there was some coding as well. Yeah. And like coding and assembly, and then also web developer stuff and stuff like that. But like, you would kind of expect some people to, like, some people would fall off on the hardware stuff, or some people would fall off on the coding stuff in a smorgasbord course. But something that's so directed at coding, I'm actually shocked to hear that number. I thought you were going to say at least 75% could code.
No, yeah, it was at most 50%. I would say the other 50% again would either just scrum by just copy pasting code, or most of them would have a partner that could code, and the other partner would like do the presentation or something like that. Our exams were never really code based. Mm-hmm. Or like if they were code based, it was like write this code or pick this code. So it was like it didn't really require you to learn how to code. So you could definitely get by the program that I took without learning how to code. You have to learn the concepts. You have to learn the like data structures and algorithms. Like all of that outside of the code. But as soon as you hit code, it's a different language. Like it's just a different beast. And 100%, I noticed there's people that could go through that barrier and there's people that couldn't. And what my fear, and again, the fear that I have with ChatGPT is that a lot of those people that bounced off and weren't able to get through and weren't able to establish themselves in coding, they're going to ride the coattails of ChatGPT now.
Right.
For sure. Because that's what they did with the partners. And they're going to be more willing or more likely to try to enter the workforce. And so that just adds more competition on the workforce. And so for the managers or for the hiring aspect, you're going to have to weed that out and figure out who is a ChatGPT coder and doesn't want to solve the hard problems and who isn't. And it's just going to get hard. Like, it's just going to become more difficult to evaluate and figure that out because ChatGPT is just going to get better and better and better at solving stuff, and people will just use it. Obviously, they're not going to solve hard problems if they don't have to. And yeah, those are the people that I think they'll make it through sometimes, but will be probably the fastest to bounce out of a harder position. Like when you get into a ecosystem of a million different plugins and a completely different environment than what you're used to in college, that just AI is just not going to be able to help you as much with, you're probably not going to be able to be a productive developer. Yeah, it's a tough road for some, but if you're able to get through that barrier, I feel like that's the thing that will make you more hireable.
Well, you and I recently have been really talking about how we really want to build things, and we've mentioned it on the show a few times where we always get bogged down in sort of our regular client work, and obviously we're building things, fixing things, or conceptualizing things, but we're also doing business admin in there, and it's great, it pays the bills and things like that, and some of the projects are cool, and that's not what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say though is if someone comes up to me and says oh, what do you build? It's some of the stuff I literally can't tell them because it's oh, this is NDA or it got shut down and then that looks bad on me and that's not my fault. It's I built, a random business, a pretty decent website and then the business shut down. That's not my fault. That's not on me. So I find that really fascinating that, I'm wondering, I guess this is kind of a half-baked idea, but you and I, when we were in college, we had that TR. It was called the TR, Technical Report Project. And it was all about the technical report, which was kind of weird. But really, it was, in terms of figuring or doing it, it was a technical report on a project that we created. And it was something where we had to marry together our smorgasbord of knowledge to build a device. And so that really was a trial by fire. That was there was money on the line, $700 plus, and this is mid 2010s or something like that, early 2010s. And we're in college, so $700 is a lot of money. And it was we have to figure out how to get this thing working. And so for example, I built a lux meter that reads the light level, and it also reads the angle at which the light is coming in. And it also saves the data, and you can save a certain amount of points. So you can save the lux is this, the lux is that, the lux is this at these angles. And then you can actually plug it into a computer, and then MATLAB would grab, talk to the device. And then it was a little handheld device, and it would pull in that information and make a graph. So just an example for what I did. And everyone did different things. You got to make your own, Mike, you made some sort of Bluetooth device, I think.
Bluetooth with a sensor array. It had a temperature sensor and proximity sensor. I think it had a bunch of sensors on it. The device had a Bluetooth connector, and then I had an app on my phone that would connect to it. And I also had a light and a buzzer on it so that I can trigger them from my phone or with any sort of thing. So it was just essentially a sensor array with some inputs and outputs. And
but you made that app, right? You made that mobile app.
I made the mobile app, and I made the firmware and the microcontroller firmware to control all of the and obviously the circuit board.
Which is crazy. And we actually had a bit of an incident where we couldn't order boards because there was some sort of shipping issue. So we literally chemically made circuit boards, which was very dangerous. And I would rather I'm not going to share the concoction because we found out that one of us was wearing a dust mask as a joke. And by the end of the day, it was stained with the chemical, meaning that the chemical was in the fucking air. And most of us did not have a mask on. I was soldering with lead solder with no mask and no ventilation. Those were some wild times, and I do not recommend anyone do that. But well, now there's things like PCB waves.
It was fun though.
Yeah, we had pictures of it and stuff.
Yeah, it was a good time.
We got our projects working too. Things were working, things were going good. I don't know, that was it. It just.
So I see what you're saying. I think that that's going to still be the case where the proof is in the pudding
Right.
kind of situation where like that's why portfolios are so important now, and they have been before. Now they're even more important. Like, what can you actually build?
Right.
Is it a template that ChatGPT spit out, or is it an actual application that's doing a bunch of different things and stuff like? I think that the bar has gotten higher now because of AI. So like a to-do app is probably not going to cut it. A template app is probably not going to cut it. You're probably going to have to do something that integrates multiple different things into one, adds in multiple APIs, something that proves that you really thought about it and it actually works, and deploy it. Like, you're going to have to go above and beyond on your portfolio to actually like prove to your employers that you've been through the shit. And again, it comes back to that. It's like you've solved these issues. Like, we solved those issues in the TR by literally chemically making circuit boards, right? Like, that was a barrier that a lot of people would have just been like, okay, I'm just going to write the technical report where this failed. But we didn't. We went through it, and that was proof that we could do that. And that's what I would like to, like, if I'm hiring a junior developer, I have to be able to see that in some way, shape, or form. Proving that is becoming harder and harder.
Right.
But you need to establish that you understand what you're doing. And in an interview, a lot of this comes out, to be fair, right? Like, if I'm going to ask someone direct questions about the code base that they've written, and it was only written by AI, I'll know that you're bullshitting pretty quickly,
Right.
because you're not the one that wrote the code base. So if you're using AI to write your code, that's fine, but you better understand what's happening there to a certain degree, so that you can talk about it in an interview setting. Because that's what I do. I interview people based on their code, not on random code that I ask them to write. And so like, it gives them more comfort, and it makes them more loose, and it makes it so it's easier to talk about more interesting concepts rather than putting them on a whiteboard to write some random algorithm that I could care less about.
Let me ask you a question then, a little bit of a follow up. So okay, so just to capsulize the idea of like the TR project. The reason why I brought that up is because, and you were mentioning it, is because like it makes people like build something, and that is difficult whether you have AI with you or not.
Yeah.
However, back then we did not have AI, and some of the projects that people chose and were approved because they had to be approved by a professor were rather simple by today's means. It'd be like, oh, like I made like a dog feeder back before, like, you know, remote smart dog feeders were all over the place kind of thing. And it's like, you know, you just had a servo open a door and a treat drop down type of thing, and it wasn't like that complex because we weren't mechanical engineers. Now, okay, so that's that. My question is, like, you hire people, Mike. You talk about, you know, looking at portfolios and the importance of a portfolio, like you said. Are you now, or do you think it has been adjusted at all, or will be adjusted, I guess, looking for more complex things done in a portfolio, specifically because people could use AI? Now, here's the thing, though. I have a question, though. So we've talked about like quite the spectrum of people, where it's like some people are AI, you know, they're all about it. Some people use it occasionally. Some people vibe code, you know, basically exclusively, whatever. Because you can vibe code yourself into a pretty big project. However, like you said, if you ask what the code base is, kind of nonsense. But to get that first interview, are the people who are making simpler projects but completely by hand, are they, do you think, missing out on interviews because people are like, this has been done before? But it's like, yeah, but this was done by hand and by me alone, and this was not done by, you know, an AI doing something. And you know what I mean? So like, is that something that's happening, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if it's happening en masse right now, because I think hiring managers are still catching up to this, and it could take years before really this becomes a standard.
Sure, yeah.
For myself, I can talk about myself. I think, yes, that would impact my decision. Like, if a person submits a portfolio that has a very simple project, I don't really have a good way to check if they are the ones that wrote it or not.
Okay.
So for me, it's difficult to gauge that. So they will get screwed a little bit, for sure. Even though they wrote it themselves, they understand everything. Like, that's the difficulty with getting that for that interview, is that you have to present yourself as someone that's better than all the other candidates without speaking to anyone, without knowing anyone, without understanding without myself knowing them and them knowing me. So like, that inherently puts us at a disadvantage for being able to suss out the right person. And
right.
Sometimes, especially nowadays, it's going to misfire, where I will accidentally, and this hasn't happened yet because I haven't done a ton of hiring recently, but I will pick the wrong candidate for the interview, I think, in the upcoming future, because of the fact that someone could probably build a really complex app using AI, and I'll get tricked into believing that it wasn't AI, or like some parts of it weren't AI or something like that.
Right.
And I'll bring them into an interview, and the reality is I'll probably have to waste some time because I'll ask them about it, they won't be able to answer the questions, and then I'll move on. Like that's normal, but I think that's going to be exacerbated right now because people are going to get really good at building complex things with AI, and sussing that out will be harder and harder without an interview.
This is such a like difficult thing to judge too, because like AI is a major leap, I would say, from something like a Stack Overflow. But like, how many people from the Stack Overflow era would be incapable of really effectively, I would say, using just a manual? A classic one in IT is like, just refer to the spec sheet. And people are like, oh my God, the spec sheet. And it's like, it's kind of, that's kind of old hat. It's always kind of there. It's like, it's something that it's in the background. It's like landline telephone. It's like, it's there. The system's in place. A lot of people have it. A lot of people don't. And it's just sort of like, we know that it's there, but we don't really think about it anymore. Like, I don't know, like how, I guess the thing is it's like, I don't know how to judge these things appropriately, because I would love to see, and this maybe like would allow me to judge it, like just personally, I would love to see like what a portfolio looked like before the days of ChatGPT, and then also see, and I'm sure I could find this somewhere, and see a portfolio, or actually let's forget ChatGPT, before Stack Overflow and after Stack Overflow, that era, and see the jump. Now, obviously, there's going to be a tech jump where like, web apps weren't as big in the back in the day and things like that. But like in terms of like a programming concept, though, I think you could probably like kind of within relation, you could figure it out, and you could see like who is super skilled and who like are we? Did portfolios get more complex, not just because of the market calling for web apps and things, but did portfolios become more complex because people were getting code snippets from something like Stack Overflow? Now the difference there, of course, is that, a bunch of the time, I would say 90% of the time for me personally, is I had to manipulate that code. Like, obviously, like no one's writing or rarely is writing exactly what I want. Sometimes it happens and it's great, but that's always the meme, right? Where it's just like, I'm not really a coder. I just copy paste from Stack Overflow. But yet, like when you say it with ChatGPT or when you say it with AI, for some reason it has even a more negative connotation. It's like Stack Overflow felt like a toxic environment, but that was because of the community, for like largely, right? But many people didn't look down on you if you like referred to Stack Overflow. But I feel like a lot of people right now would look down on you if you referred to AI. Like if you're like, I made this with AI, people are kind of like, oh, like here we go. And maybe that's wrong. That's just the vibe like, I'm getting.
It might be a vibe in some places, but that vibe is changing rapidly by people that are like, okay, I hate this, but I'm going to use it, and then they're like, oh, that's honestly, I've seen that reaction over the years happen multiple times, like many times where people are like, I'm not going to use this, and then they use it, and they're like, oh, I guess I have to use this because if I don't, then I'm going to lose my job. Like that. That's the reality of where we're at with AI. If you don't embrace it, regardless of how good of a coder you are, in special niche, like outside of very, very special niches, like there's some verticals, there's some niches where like there's just no one to replace you. Like there's just not anyone
mainframe
like,
people.
Sure, yeah, like, but even then, like there's probably a lot of open source mainframe. Anyway, in most situations, no matter how good of a developer you are, if you don't embrace AI right now, you're not going to keep up with the people that do. Because I think a mediocre coder that embraces AI will outperform greatly. I'm not talking like a little bit. I'm talking like a significant amount. Like you just saw for yourself a 10x improvement in speed for building something.
Right. Yeah. Like sincerely,
so
like
that's what I'm trying to say is like a mediocre coder will 10x might be exaggerating, but it might not moving forward in time.
It's probably context sensitive. Like for me, it probably was 10x.
Yeah. For that specific use case. Yeah. Sometimes it'll be a little bit less. Sometimes it could be more. So like, that's the scale that we're looking at. If you're not embracing it, you could be 10 times slower than the person that's not as good as you is.
Right.
So I think that it's a moot point to discuss if someone is embracing it or not embracing it in general, like in the sense of like, oh, they're looking down on you, because if they're looking down on you, you should be looking at them being like, oh, I'm going to take your job. That's the reality. Like that's how that's how I very seriously feel about it right now. If you're really in the boat of like, I'm not going to use this from a principle perspective, like for instance, copyright, whatever, like people are out there that are not not using AI from many principles, energy use, copyright. Like there's many reasons not to use AI. I want to be clear.
I have friends that do have legit arguments, and they're not developers. I want to be clear, so they don't really need it in this particular context. But they'll be like, I don't chat GPT or anything, or I don't like use AI or anything because of like enter an issue here, and it's like that is a thing.
That is a thing, right? It is 100% a thing, and I'm not saying that their arguments are wrong either. They have some legit things, like the especially the copyright argument for me is like really, really bad. Like they just essentially stole a bunch of content and trained on it.
Definitely an eyebrow raiser.
Very much so. Like it's bullshit. But the cat's out of the bag. It's out of the bag. And if you don't use it from a principled standpoint or whatever standpoint from like whatever, it's only going to impact you negatively. It won't impact AI. I can guarantee that. It won't change anything about the trajectory of AI, even if a significant portion of the population doesn't use it, because the other portion that is using it, and they will use it, are going to be the ones that benefit from it. And if you're not part of that population, you're going to be the ones that don't benefit from it and could find yourselves out of a job. And this applies not to coding, not just to coding. It applies to tons of the clerk work, law, health, so many things. Like so many industries are in this bubble, right? Of where AI is perfectly suited to help them. I'm not saying take their jobs, but like help them perform their jobs. That if you're not embracing it, you're putting yourself at a very significant disadvantage, regardless of how valid your reasons are. And again, I do believe that the reasons are valid. So I think I'll kind of, it's a really difficult concept to talk about because we're still really early in the game.
For sure.
Like it's not matured enough. There's still a lot of mistakes that they make, but every single AI CEO right now, like, every single one of them from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, they're all saying the same thing, that there's going to be a radical shift in workforce requirements coming up. That's what they're aiming for. That's what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to do this radical shift. And like I think it's important for people to realize that. I don't know how we got there from vibe coding, but I guess like it does relate to a certain degree. It's just,
well, I think you nailed it with the comment that said this stuff's early, because I was actually going to interrupt you briefly there to say this episode started with what should we be labeling this, and then it went into like, well, did you 10x save your time, like you said, and then I was like, well, like if we're talking in terms of like, I guess like time saved and productivity really is what we're talking about. We're talking in terms of that. It's like, why are we even labeling this? Like at the end of the day, the employer is going to be like, did you get the ticket done? And if I got the ticket done, then fantastic. And many workplaces are based on tickets. Like it's a very non-human way to timesheets, things like that. It's a very non-human, inner interface like that. Like eventually a human comes in and like, if you're doing BS work, then you're doing BS work. But I mean, if you're getting things done quickly, they don't care whether you used, edition 1 of a textbook versus edition 2 of a textbook. They're just sort of like, well, you did it, so like I don't care. And your other comment too earlier, where you were talking about how like, people basically, short of some niches, need to learn AI, specifically we're talking in the development field just for me right now, but other fields as well. But it like, because it boosts their productivity. But the image I had in my head was, could you imagine somebody refusing to use the internet? Could you imagine someone being like, I refuse to use the internet, I'm just going to use these books? And could you imagine somebody flipping through these large manuals and textbooks from like universities and whatever, and learning anything but like, zoom in on coding? Could you imagine troubleshooting code and being like, oh, that was like, section 2, part 1. Oh, but I also need section 8. So let's put a sticky note here. Let's go back. And it's like, how inefficient is that? Just making that book a PDF and putting it on the computer is a great, you can control F, you can find things, already it's one step. You're way more efficient. Well, ChatGPT is yet another huge step. Right? Yep. Where like that PDF became Stack Overflow because it's like kind of like crowdsourced knowledge. And then all of a sudden now, it's like now we have this other thing, and there's always resistance to it. But The classic to me is like, we talked about this on one of the web news recently, where we were talking about kind of being overwhelmed by notifications. And one of the drawbacks of modern technology, modern life, I suppose, is the fact that like your phone just keeps going off. Like for me, I've been fighting newsletters nonstop. I got like 6 newsletters over the last 2 days. I didn't even remember signing up for them, right? And so the thing is pinging, pinging, pinging. However, that problem is not going to make people all get rid of smartphones. We're not going to go back and be like, that's it, we're all going back to the flip phone, shut the internet off on a mobile sense. It's all going to be, back to the family computer to do your computing. Like you do your computing at a desk, like we did in the 90s. It's like you go to the family computer, you do your internet stuff, you do your like book report, and then when you leave, you are no longer computing. Like you're away from technology. We're not going to do that anymore. Like I got technology in my one set of glasses. I got smart glasses. I got technology attached to my wrist with my smartwatch. We got headphones in if we're listening to stuff. We're not even necessarily listening to local stuff. We might be streaming music. Like, you know what I mean? Like we are no longer using the old way. And that doesn't mean it's going to go away. Like, I mean, like some people are going to use flip phones and things like that. Some people are still going to use vinyls instead of listening to Spotify. And we see that, of course, like there's always, whether that's a niche thing or a collector's thing or whatever, the market speaks for itself, and humans are not robots where they're like, most efficient is Spotify. Therefore, I'll use Spotify now. Like no one does that. I don't know. This episode's like really got me thinking. Like it's kind of like bounced a lot of ideas around in my head, because I use AI to help me a lot here and there. Because a lot of the stuff I do is actually pretty like human. Like I kind of talk to customers and stuff, so I'm not like talking to ChatGPT while I'm doing that. But I will say that like this episode's like really enlightening to me, is because like we've talked about the efficiency bumps, and we've talked about whether you should learn it, and we talked about whatever. But going through this, talking about like a real life situation and kind of like breaking it down, and then somehow, like you said, Mike, getting all the way to productivity, it's sort of like, this maybe is what this just boils down to. This is just yet another productive thing. We want to label it with a million other different things, and we want to talk about it in a million different ways, and we want to love it, hate it, kill it, keep it around, make it better, make it worse, whatever. But at the end of the day, like it's likely the next step, and it's not the last step, is I think what a lot of people, every time a new step comes out, they think it's the last step, and they're like, this is a place to leave things off. I wouldn't be surprised in 10 years if I don't even know about, like, I don't even talk about ChatGPT anymore. If you are like beaming information, like my random use case, but I have my smart glasses, has transition lenses, has cameras, has a microphone, and has speakers, so I can listen. If I walk around and I've seen the commercial where it's like Meta AI, listen, like you can be like, Meta AI, what am I looking at, kind of thing. If that type of thing, and doesn't even need to be my Meta, gets really good, am I really going to be typing in my prompts to ChatGPT already? And I don't know about you, Mike, I find the bandwidth of ChatGPT to be slow. I have a complex problem and I'm like, oh my God, I got to type this huge freaking thing out.
So I still think that there's always going to be a use case for typing. I've said this many times
for sure.
Yeah, because of the fact that like I don't want to interact with everything with my voice. There's just so many different edge cases or use cases where I'd rather type something, and I'm faster at typing something in certain ways than just saying it out loud with my voice. If you're at a doctor's office, if you're out and about, like if you're at home, like a keyboard to me is a better interface for 90% of my communication with the computer than with voice chat on my phone. Like maybe that's a personal thing. Like shopping online, I will never do that without a screen or without like with voice chat or whatever. Like all that seems weird to me.
Like you want visual confirmation. You don't want to talk
I want
to
visual
the Amazon
confirmation.
Echo.
I want a more precise input field. I want a better way to interact with whatever I'm doing. Like I just think like the voice has limitations and always will. I think that there's going to be like neural connections. That will be the thing that takes that away. Like we're already seeing Neuralink. We're seeing Amazon's take at it, I think, coming up soon. Like so there's multiple companies that are chasing that route. And I think that's going to be probably the next frontier for removing the need for a screen or a keyboard or whatever. But I think I still do believe that for a lot of things, I'd rather chat with something, on my phone or like with a keyboard or just like I'm not going to use voice for everything, but some things will get better with it. The world is going to change. I have no doubt about that. All of these device companies are coming up with like these weird AI pins and stuff like that. Those are just like Gen 0.1. that we've seen so far, like Rabbit, HQ, and the AI pin, whatever's come out. I think the next generation is going to be significantly better. There's already next generation ones planned. OpenAI just bought Johnny Ive's company that's doing a screenless pin as well. So that's probably going to be better. Like I'm guaranteeing Apple will release something like 6 to 7 years that'll be better. Like it will get better. Glasses will get better. And there will be a different use case for that. I don't think it's going to replace anything, if that makes sense. I think that they're just going to be supplementary devices on top of what we're already used to with phones. At least for the next decade or like decade and a half.
That's very true. Like, I mean, right now we're talking about all this ChatGPT stuff, and they're, the actual AI, LLM thing, I think is pretty revolutionary. I know some people think it's not, and it's just like a, hallucinating parrot of, fancy autocomplete. Whatever. I mean, to me, it goes beyond that. But the point is that it's all piggybacking on old technology. Like I open up a ChatGPT app or I open up the website. It's not like it's not like ChatGPT invented like a new contact lens, where it goes on my eye, or a new type of smartwatch that completely like just like throw the smartwatch out in the garbage and like this is the best smartwatch ever or whatever. It's not in like a home bot that's like sitting beside me watching me creepily or something. It's not in, well, I don't know. I heard that like Samsung does want to release Bali. I don't know if you remember that little ball that like walks around and it like turned the TV on for the cats. And they had that like TV that like turns either portrait or,
yes, that's
horizontal.
Right, yeah.
And it like shut the blinds because it was a certain time. And then you don't need to take pictures of your family anymore because it watches you and knows when you would like a picture and does it for you. I love that, actually. I know that some people hate that, but I love the idea of being like, man, these are candid pictures. Like, this is sick. I don't know. I like the idea of it.
It would actually be cool if you set up like a time frame for that. Like, hey, we're all hanging out. Let's turn it on. I wouldn't want it to always be on, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's like the worst time you stub your toe and it's like, oh, reaction time.
It just like shows you like a slideshow of you like swearing. And I mean, that could be funny too, but like there could be other times where you just don't want pictures. Like,
yeah,
plenty of time. Most of the time, I would say in my life, I don't want pictures being taken. So I'd want to have a lot of control over when that thing is actually doing that feature. But I agree with you. In some settings, that would be actually pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for a lot of this like stuff. Like I think this stuff's kind of cool and I want to try it out. Again, yes, there are problems, but I'm definitely down to try this stuff. But I think that's basically the episode. I mean, at the end of the day here, the big question was, once again, kind of a two-parter. What's the step above vibe coding, and is it still vibe coding? I kind of think that like maybe like the step above vibe coding is just not vibe coding. Like anything that's other than vibe coding. Like it's almost like I came into this episode thinking there were like tiers of it or something like that, where it's like, Matt, you were vibe coding for 50% of that interaction that you had making that Google sitemap. But it's not really the case, right? It's just sort of like I was using a tool, and vibe coding maybe is like a very specific thing. However, it's like, how do you label all this, right? And so
who cares about the label? I think that's my main thing, is like, who gives a crap? Like,
yeah,
vibe coding, not vibe coding. I think that's for yourself. Like that's for your own thought process, whatever. But like labeling it anything, I don't know if it solves or helps anything, honestly.
No, I agree with that. Like the labeling is weirdly it's a weird like roadblock even in my brain. Like it's like I keep thinking like, what's the line of vibe coding? What's too much AI? And it's just sort of like, why don't we just make stuff? It's sort of like that question of like, people are like, is HTML a programming language? It's like, I just don't care about that argument. I use HTML to make websites. Like it's a part of the development process. Like that ends it. I don't need to have this argument over like, what's the label of this and that? It's like, I'm not in I'm not on the team writing the textbook for the high school student explaining what HTML is. That's not my job, right? Maybe those people, and likely those people, need to worry about it, but I don't. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Once again, another conversational episode. We are putting together, we're trying to like make sure that web news comes out each week. No promises yet. It's still like a new thing. And like I said, I accidentally like deleted one of them. So we'll have one that's backdated at some point soon. But it is on YouTube if you want to check that out. But I mean, other than that, if you want to support episodes like this, remember that we are on Patreon, patreon.com/HTML all the things. Check out the tiers. Give that a go. Many thanks to the $3 tier patrons. Tim from the Web Hacker on the webhacker.com. Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com. Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com. Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se. Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And also remember, you can comment on these episodes, whether you use the Podbean app or whether you use Spotify. You can comment on there. We've gotten a lot of great feedback for conversational episodes and even the format of web news. If you have any like suggestions for things things we should cover, or if you were like, hey, I like I like lecture format, or I guess that's what people have been calling it. I like lecture format for these type of episodes. I like conversational for these. Whatever your suggestions are, please let us know, because I do read most, if not all, the comments. And that's kind of it. Remember that if you want to learn how to code and learn with their interactive media player code editor, you can do so with our, man, I'm all buggered up right now, with up to 20% off discount using our link, scrimba.com/links/HTML, all the things. Remember, they have full stack courses now, interactive media player code editor, where you can pause what the teacher's doing, play with the code a bit, see what's going on, and then continue the lesson right away just by hitting play. It's pretty nifty. And last but not least, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Now, before this outro lasts any longer, feel free to leave a comment or review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.